Donovan Mitchell on the move to the Cavs.
We got ourselves a trade!
Yes, we do. And we got to get into the classic factory for it. Task Trade JD with you here. We didn't think of the Cavs. They came out of nowhere.
Honestly, when I got a text message from Art Hamilton about this.
Okay.
I saw the tweet. I was like, this has got to be fake. The Cavs? Donovan Mitchell is going to the Cavs. Click through. It's legit. Put on a shirt. I was wearing a tank top, playing tennis earlier today. I know I smell terrible. I wasn't expecting to see people right now.
You smell good.
Well, at least we got a little distance between us, so I'm not wafting too hard.
No,
but, man, what a shocker. Donovan Mitchell going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it when I saw it, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now that after looking at it for a few minutes, I'm glad I was still here in the Classic Factory.
Yeah.
So I'm hanging out, reading about Donovan Mitchell to my favorite team of last year for a package that includes guard Collin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, a big, plays small sometimes, Ochai Agbaji, 3 first-round picks that are unprotected from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and 2 pick swaps for Donovan Mitchell. If you like knowing where those picks are, 25, 27, and 29 unprotected going to the Utah Jazz with 3 players, Collin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, and Ochai Agbaji, who was drafted this year, number 14 from Kansas. What are your thoughts about the Cleveland Cavaliers side first, Trey? Because they were a solid team last year. They finished 44-38, ended in the 8th seed after being really good most of the year. There were 14 games above 500 at 35-21, and then injuries got them finished at 8th. They didn't give up one of their all-stars, and Darius Garland or Jared Allen. What are your thoughts?
Man, to be able to bring in another all-star in Donovan Mitchell, 3-time all-star, still only 26 years old.
Yes.
This is awesome for the Cavs. They definitely gave up a lot in draft compensation down the road. I don't think they gave up a ton in players. Lauri Markkanen had a decent season for them. Played a little bit better than I thought he was going to.
He did.
Last year, but a player that you would certainly throw into a trade for a Donovan Mitchell. Collin Sexton got hurt during last year. It was kind of curious why they hadn't signed him this deep into the summer. I guess this is why, but another player who is easily replaced if Mitchell's the guy coming back. And an older draft pick in Agbaji, who maybe has some potential, but another tradable piece to bring in an all-star already in Donovan Mitchell to pair with your all-star Darius Garland, your other all-star Jared Allen, and your future all-star Evan Mobley. They've got 4 all-stars basically right now, all 26 or younger, all locked up for a while. They've got an awesome backcourt with Garland and Mitchell. They've got an awesome front court with Mobley and Allen. There are definitely questions, I think, on the wing. Maybe Ricky Rubio will be able to help out there once he comes back from injury. Karis LeVert, I think, will get a shot. They will want to look at some other guys, but I think the Cavs got a lot better here. Last year, they were in that 4 to 8 range, just like the Bulls were, just like the Raptors, the Hawks, the Nets, for whatever reason, were down there last year. I think the Cavs have taken a serious step up. I think they're still probably a tier below the best teams in the Eastern Conference, but this makes them a lot better going into next year. And getting all 4 of these players together, young, with a chance to grow, they're going to be good next year, and they're going to be even better coming the future.
Yeah, I think they're in that second tier, right behind the Milwaukee. Boston occupies that first tier. I think those are fair to say. Those first, the 2 teams in the first tier, and then that second tier for me now includes the Cavs. I kind of had them up there for much of the year last year, and then they sort of fell off. But the second tier is Philadelphia, Miami, and I think it's Cleveland. Unfortunately, I think the Bulls are plopped into tier number 3.
They ain't done much this summer.
No, and they didn't finish incredibly well. I think they're in that third tier with Toronto, as you mentioned, and with Atlanta. Brooklyn, I'm not even going to mention at this point. Who knows? They could easily be in that second tier as well, but the third tier is probably safe to put them alongside Chicago, Atlanta, Toronto. But I think Cleveland is better because of that crazy backcourt now with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Will they be able to work together? The answer is 100% yes, because last year I went into the regular season thinking this Cavs team could be a sneaky playoff team because Collin Sexton and Darius Garland can worry about offense because they've got the guys you said, Mobley and Allen, and then Isaac Okoro is their junkyard dog as their number 3 because he wore that big junkyard dog chain and because he does junkyard dog things. So they can worry about defense, really, and Mitchell and Sexton can worry about the offense. Mitchell and Garland now can worry about the offense. So Garland is perfect, I think, alongside of Mitchell. He can allow Mitchell to do his thing while still getting his. Garland is super young at 22. Jared Allen's 24. And, soon to be 26-year-old Donovan Mitchell joining them along with 21-year-old Evan Mobley. Do you think they gave up too much with 3 unprotected picks? And then the players, as we've said, the guard in Sexton, big in Markkanen, and the wing in Agbaji.
I'm not really worried about giving up any of the players they did. I think this is a good use of a contract like Sexton's. Once he went down for the season last year, it didn't look like it at the time, but it definitely had a huge effect on the Cavs. So being able to replace him with a better version of him in Donovan Mitchell, I think is huge. Markkanen had his moments with the Cavs, certainly, but definitely a replaceable player. It's all about the draft compensation. But at the very least, the Cavs did a smart thing. Shout out to Tom Haberstroh for noting this. The Cavs kept their 2024 first-round draft pick when a certain Bronny James will become draft eligible in the future. Who knows what's going to happen? But at least they did hold on to that little nugget of hope for the future. I think the fact that Mitchell is a young player as well, who we've already seen have NBA success and some postseason success as well, that to me makes it okay to give up these picks down the line. Surely one of those picks is going to be juicier than the Cavs are thinking it is right now. That's just how things happen in the NBA.
Sure.
But I think it's worth giving up that kind of draft compensation to build your team and say, hey, we got a core here. We're going forward with this core, and we think they can really grow together.
Every trade that happens this offseason gets compared to the Rudy Gobert trade. And so this one doesn't look bad at all.
No, not at all.
3 picks versus 4 in the Rudy Gobert trade. People say it was 5 because there was a pick swap, and there was Walker Kessler as well, who's a first-round pick this year. You can look at this and say 4 picks for the Utah Jazz because they're getting Ochai Agbaji, and they're getting 3 unprotected first-round picks. Yeah, like you said, sometimes those picks end up being a lot worse, better, however you look at it from the Cavs' perspective in the long run. But these guys are so steady on this Cavs team. Like, they're going to have a good defense.
I mean, yes.
They're going to be good.
Hopefully, yeah. We've seen one great season of Cleveland Cavaliers, and honestly, it was more like 2/3 of a great season, and they kind of fell off as injuries came.
Yeah.
You have to think they're going to gel together. You have to assume they're going to play well together, because like you're saying, a Garland and Mitchell backcourt isn't super different than a Garland-Sexton backcourt from just a general build of a team, and Mitchell's obviously a better player than Sexton, so they should be able to work there. Maybe an injury gets picked up at some point during the 2027 season, and suddenly that pick is looking fine. But that's okay to me because Cleveland is on the way up. They see that they're on the way up, and that they are able to have a core together. And I think the consistency and the continuity they'll be able to build over the course of time will be worth maybe losing one of these picks that they lose sometime in the future.
And I'll say the Cavs last year dealt with injuries really, 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 really well. I don't have mangames.com in front of me here, but they lost a ton of man games. They were able to handle Ricky Rubio's injury, Collin Sexton's injury, Jared Allen went down, Evan Mobley went down, everybody went down, and they were still able to finish 44-38 in Eastern Conference. Steady is the word that keeps coming back to me watching this team, because Mobley and Allen's defense is going to be there every stinking night. Those guys operate, this sort of differently than most defenses in the NBA. Like they can track everywhere within the 3-point line. They're going to be damn good. And I know people will look at Donovan Mitchell and call him, a powder or whatever because of the way things ended. He's been part of really good defenses, not to bring up the whole defense thing. I think that side of the ball, they're going to be great. They're just going to be great on defense. And then the offense, it's going to be taken care of by that backcourt with Donovan Mitchell and a great, great young guard in Darius Garland. I don't think they're really going to get in each other's way. They're already tweeting, Trey. Darius Garland has tweeted 10 and spider, the spider emoji. I guess he wears 10.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. I mean, I forget numbers. And then Donovan Mitchell has already retweeted it with a double exclamation point.
Okay.
So those guys are on point together. I think they should be excited to play with one another. I'm surprised we didn't see this coming as basketball geeks. Because, as we said, Sexton is a Donovan Mitchell light. He is
a similar player, yeah.
He's a similar player.
A score-first, smaller guard.
Yes. And the Jazz were the top defense in the league a few years ago, so everybody ridiculing Donovan Mitchell for being sort of a barn door. It's not a barn door.
Cone?
I wasn't gonna go traffic cone, like it's like a saloon door, like a.
So saloon door's fair, yeah,
Okay.
like flapping in the breeze.
Yeah, but
turnstile.
Yeah. Sure.
He was all of those things, and at times he can be all of those things.
But he can try. He can try, and he's got a lot of good guys behind him.
And he's been on a lot of good defenses, like you're saying. But that's with Rudy Gobert behind you. That being said, he's got the American Rudy Gobert and Jared Allen behind him. Also, Evan Mobley. It is going to be a big ask, I think, for both of those guys because Mitchell and Garland. They're going to get torched at times. There's no doubt about it. They're both smaller. They're both not necessarily lockdown defenders. And like I said earlier, they've got no real established players on the wing. Okoro's a good defender, but he gives it all back offensively, and he can hurt your offense on that side. They'll be able to find a wing at some point during their development. And I think Mobley and Allen are good enough to be able to cover for the backcourt.
I'm more of an Okoro believer than you are. He can take the team's best perimeter player on defense, and then he can slash and do some things offensively.
I honestly just came up with a great nickname for Isaac Okoro this very second.
Okay.
Isaac No Scoro.
Oh, get out of here.
He locks him down on defense?
No.
But then on offense, he's not scoring either.
He does a little bit on offense.
Isaac No Scoro.
Oh, God.
Put it on Basketball Reference.
If Collin Sexton is a Donovan Mitchell light, which is nice of us to call him that, then Ochai Agbaji, who they traded in this deal to Utah, is an Isaac Okoro light. Doesn't have as much offense as Isaac Okoro, but is known as sort of a defender, a wing. Anyway, I believe in that front court. If you want to call Isaac Okoro as part of the front court, that defensive tenacity of him, Allen, and Mobley is going to get you a lot of freaking wins to me, and that's why they're in that second tier. He can score.
The only real criticism I have for Cleveland is that this is the end of SexLand. This is the death of the SexLand backcourt.
Very good point.
I mean, maybe we'll have to get Lee in here. He can raise his shirt to the rafters or something like that. I'm sure they'll come up with a cool nickname for Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, though.
Yes.
Mitchland doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
You want to have sex in there, but then it's really just...
Hey, you're the one who subscribes to mangames.com.
I've got a membership. It's no lemonparty.org. Anyway, so yeah, the just again to salivate over this, the new Cleveland Cavaliers. It's 22-year-old Darius Garland, soon to be 26-year-old Donovan Mitchell in the backcourt. Isaac Okoro, don't have his age in front of me, but a great small forward alongside Jared Allen, 24, one-time All-Star. And Evan Mobley, the 21-year-old Rookie of the Year runner-up from last year, with guys like Ricky Rubio and Kevin Love still coming off the bench.
Kevin Love, yeah, exactly right. That's a weird one. I guess he'll still be around as the vet. He stuck around long enough for Cleveland to get good again. That's pretty awesome, actually.
And the ceiling, I know we're putting them in the second tier, but maybe I'm just riding high because of this recent. We're a little recency bias here, but I think they could be in that first tier not too long from now.
My tiers are a little different than yours. I mean, obviously you got Milwaukee and Boston right at top.
Yes.
Miami finished first in the Eastern Conference last year.
Yes.
They're ahead. Philadelphia is ahead of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah. We're not sure about Brooklyn. That's the great unknown in the Eastern Conference right now. But I think 4 through 8, they're certainly going to be in there. They got better this year. The Hawks got better in a kind of similar way. Like, it's going to be interesting to see Trey Young and DeJounte Murray.
They're retweeting their tweets as well.
So, I mean, that's going to be a cool little rivalry to see. Cleveland versus Atlanta. We're going to be going down to the Fortress for those ones.
Yeah, but the Cavs are better than them.
And probably. I think they are probably as well. So I would think the Cavs and the Hawks are a little bit better, honestly, than both the Hawks and the Bulls this year going forward. But as for why we didn't expect the Cavs, it's because they're so young. They were a little bit ahead of schedule, I thought, last year, with Garland taking a huge step forward. Yeah. Mobley looking ready to be an all-defensive candidate as a rookie was pretty surprising. And to see him gelling alongside another 7-footer in Jared Allen, nobody really expected that. It was kind of like gravy last year to see them have those improvements and also be a really good team. So for them to push all in like this, it's a little surprising, but I think it's a great move for Cleveland going forward.
Yeah, if you believe in Cleveland, it's how much stock do you put into last year's 44-38 record, which again, mangames.com really did hurt them, but they were able to battle through that. So I think they were a far better team than 44 wins, especially when you're talking about a rookie Mobley, a third-year player, and Darius Garland, guys that are only going to get better here. And when you look at the Eastern Conference, yes, the Heat were the number 1 ranked team, but 1 through 4, it was 53 through 51 wins. The Heat won the Eastern Conference with 53 wins. The Celtics, Bucks, and Sixers all had 51 wins. So I throw out that number of the Cavs winning 44 games. This could be a 50-win team next season, and so a great step for them. On the other side, the Utah Jazz are deciding, we're tearing this thing down. Hey, Spurs, you want Wembanyama? So do we. It's torn. I will say, Collin Sexton, as part of this transaction, Shams Charania reporting that he signed a 4-year, $72 million deal. He was a restricted free agent with the Cavs, and nothing was happening with him. As you said, maybe this was the reason. They were waiting for a team that wanted to trade for him. They get a Mitchell Light for 4 years. They've got Lauri Markkanen. They've got a Rook and Agbaji. They've obviously got a lot of picks, and a note here from Adrian Wojnarowski, they also have 13 unprotected or lightly protected first-round picks.
That's a lot of picks.
It's a Danny Ainge situation, right? And then let me throw in this thing. So who the hell are they playing? They still have Mike Conley. They still have Bojan Bogdanovic and Jordan Clarkson. And so what are they doing? It seems like
what's going on in Utah?
It seems like they sure will be tearing that part of their roster down to go for Victor Wembanyama and try and get as much of out of those picks, their own picks, as possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to imagine Bogdanovic and Conley Danny will be taking a lot of calls on those guys in the coming weeks and months. I mean, maybe they stick around at least until the start of the season and the trades look a little bit better at the trade deadline, but I can't imagine the vets finishing things out with the Jazz by the end of the year. But I think the Jazz did a pretty nice job here. Got a good package from the Cavs. Who knows what you're going to get from Markkanen or Sexton or even Talen Horton-Tucker, who came back in the Patrick Beverley trade.
Yeah, that's a great point. Forgot about that.
They've got a lot of players who have had flashes, who have shown some potential in the league and haven't really established themselves. Like Sexton had an awesome 20-point-per-game season for half of a season. We saw Lauri Markkanen will shoot 6 for 9 from 3 in one game and 1 from 9 from 3 the next game. THT, he can score 20 in a game, and it's going to be all right-handed layups. If he ever gets a left hand, he'll be unstoppable. There's a lot of potential, and maybe these guys thrive with no pressure there in Utah. I have to imagine that will be the plan going forward, to get these younger players a whole bunch of time. It's just reclamation projects, because they're not going to improve the Jazz win total, which is the very important thing, because now they're going to be in the mix for Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, whose name is flying under the radar a little bit here, because we're all psyched to be saying Victor Wembanyama. But that's the big thing. Yeah, they've got 13 lightly protected or unprotected picks and swaps coming in the next few seasons. But the best draft picks the Jazz are going to have are the Jazz draft picks, because they're not going to be very good for the next couple seasons. So a quality teardown from Danny Ainge, which, now that we've seen what he's done this offseason, kind of feels like he was brought there to tear down that past era of the Jazz and build the next one going forward.
Right, and it sort of makes sense after we saw the Rowan Barrett, RJ Barrett, Rowan Barrett, his papa. Man, I'm getting old. The RJ Barrett extension in New York makes a little bit more sense now that they weren't going to trade him. They knew that something wasn't happening there with Donovan Mitchell. I'm sure Knicks fans are furious right now that they didn't get Donovan Mitchell. I will add this here, Trey, as our friend Hoops Distillery tweeted, the SexLand nickname already changed to Mobland next season, or last season, I should say. Okay. It's not as good. Mobland.
Yeah.
Mobley and Garland.
Yeah, I mean, nobody calls him Evan Mobley, I would say that's the main hang-up for me on that nickname.
So the Jazz don't have, as you said, as you kind of went through all those guys, they don't have an all-star anymore. They have a lot of...
Conley.
Conley is technically, but yeah. I like the idea of not calling a guy an all-star who isn't going to be an all-star anymore. Is Kevin Love a multiple-time all-star? I guess he is.
Put it on the plaque.
But they have a bunch of solid guys that they can hope. Collin Sexton, what is his future? Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji is not just because his name starts with O, but I think you'd probably want him to be like an OG Anunoby type guy, like that type of player. The picks are really where it's at for the Utah Jazz, but to get really bad is the idea here, and go from there. And maybe they can develop like your Talen Horton-Tuckers and Sexton now and Markkanen. But they want to be bad. They got the 25, 27, and 29 pick again from the Cleveland Cavaliers and pick swaps in 26 and 28. If the Cavs happen to be bad, the Jazz can say, I will like to swap those picks.
One swap, please.
Yeah, which sometimes happen, sometimes don't. So it's really about if these picks end up being good as to whether or not they got enough for Donovan Mitchell. It looks fine now from their perspective. And if it turns into a great draft pick, probably their own, this coming year, then it was probably worth it. And that never factors into a trade. You didn't get Victor Wembanyama from this trade, but if you're really, really bad, you might get Victor Wembanyama, who is a 7'3" Frenchman, if you didn't know, that can ball, it seems like, I don't know. What's his equivalent? I mean, is there one? I don't want to go crazy. I mean, I don't want to.
Oh, okay, never mind then. I was going to say a 7'5" Kevin Durant, but I don't know. I don't know.
Is he 7'5"?
Who knows? All I ever see is clips where they're trying to figure out exactly how tall this guy is, because nobody can believe that somebody as tall as he is should move that well. But I think it's pretty hilarious that as soon as there was like a generational international big man prospect available, both the Jazz and Spurs were like, we got to clear the decks. We got to go for this guy. The two teams you would pick to do that would be the Jazz and Spurs.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Anything crazy going on in the stream team? You're not looking anymore.
Nah.
You're done with the stream team for now.
I'm trying to stream it here on my phone. I was too excited coming over. I didn't want to go laptop here. I want to go fresh off the dome.
Yeah. I should have too, because I flubbed some stuff. But anyway,
they're calling Gabrielle here in the stream team is calling Victor Wembanyama Gobert with a handle.
Right. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm seeing 7'2", 7'3", 2.2 meters, as they say abroad. That's always fun.
People are saying maybe now is the time that we should be dunking on the Knicks a little bit, since they were pursuing Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
But to me, their number one target this entire offseason was Jalen Brunson. And they got Jalen Brunson before free agency even started. So who knows? You know the Knicks. The Knicks fans are instantly already turning on Mitchell like we didn't want him anyways. We didn't need him anyways.
Lies.
Who knows? It's more exciting.
Lies.
I think it's more exciting to have Donovan Mitchell on the Cavs than it would have been to have him on the Knicks. But that's just me.
Well, listen, I'm sure it's frustrating for a Knicks fan. We just mentioned the tiers in the East. Are they even in that third tier? This is a fair question. And they're paying three players, about an average of $27 million when you get to R.J. Barrett's contract of $30 per, Jalen Brunson at $27 per, and Julius Randle at $23 per. That's a lot of your salary cap you're eating up for
a big chunk
for a tier 3 team. That's a fair question. I don't think they're done. Yes, it is unfortunate, but all those contracts in a vacuum all sort of made sense at the time. They want to get off Fournier's money, and that last year was the year they screwed up when they signed Fournier. They signed a long-term Nerlens Noel deal. They signed a long-term Alec Burks deal. That's where they screwed up, not with the three guys I mentioned. But I'm a believer in Jalen Brunson. I'm a believer in both RJ and Rowan Barrett. I love both of those guys. And the Julius Randle thing, hopefully he can come around for them. But that's the unfortunate thing for them. They wanted Donovan Mitchell, no matter what Knicks fans say. They wanted him.
Oh, they wanted him.
Super bad.
He's taking batting practice with the New York Mets. Come on, of course they wanted him. But, I mean, when you're listing it and you're listing all these teams, like we're talking about, the Hawks made a major move.
Yeah.
The Knicks did make a major move signing Jalen Brunson. There's going to be disappointed teams in the Eastern Conference. You even look at a team like Charlotte, who's basically held pat this offseason. They've been at the very end of the play-in tournament for the past couple of seasons. They finished 10th. They go to the play-in. They get beat by 40. They could be on the outside looking in come playoff time, come play-in time, and I think that would be considered a major step back for Charlotte, considering they want to be building around LaMelo. So the East is going to be pretty tough. Once again, we've had 2 straight seasons of fighting and clawing to get into the play-in tournament, keeping things entertaining throughout the entirety of the season, and I think it's going to be much the same this year.
Right, and the Charlotte Hornets, they probably will take a step back. And speaking on a sort of in a similar vein, in the Western Conference, the Utah Jazz, I think, made a smart move to intentionally take a step back. They had to tear it down. They had to get worse, because you think the East is tough. Well, the West is literally just as tough, and the Mitchell-Gobert relationship was worn out, and they basically did as good as they possibly could in terms of draft picks. Those draft picks have to turn into players at some point.
Yep.
They do not have really one all-star on their roster now, other than Mike Conley. One all-star on their roster for the future, and they just traded away their 2 all-stars. So, you can criticize them for not having an all-star in return for their 2 all-stars that they traded in Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell this offseason. I think that's fair.
Good point. They definitely chose picks over players.
Well, they chose the P over the P. Anyway, I've been in the factory a little too long. I'm done.
Grinding, swinging the sledgehammers. What else do we do here?
What else do we do in the factory?
Loading the conveyor belts.
Nice one. That was a really nice one.
Packing the boxes.
Nice one.
Shipping out those classics.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right, so we're done here. Well done. Factory work officially complete. We will be back next week. I assume there will not be any trades before next week.
Well, I don't know, Tassie. Tony Jones is saying now we have to watch for the Jazz and the Lakers. What's next? Was this the first of a couple of Donovanmos?
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's tough to. How do you say Donovan but also Domino? Dominoes. Donvanos. This could be the first of many Donvanos to fall going forward with the Western Conference.
That's why you're great. You tried, because that's a hard one. I'm not even going to try.
Effort.
Very good effort. But yeah, taking on the Westbrook contract, that's interesting. Very interesting stuff. We will be back next week with, obviously, a No Breaks. We're going to a baseball game tomorrow, and we'll recap it on No Bunts. Next week, starting Tuesday, we'll be back there with a No Bunts and a No Breaks on Wednesday. And Is This Good? And, of course, any crazy basketballings that happened.
Didn't expect this?
Did not expect this. The first Donovan Mitchell's nose. For now, Clipper Bros.
You heard it here first. Have a great time. Turn up. Love you guys. Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. And this is a serious question, a serious ask for all of you people out there watching and listening. If you have a vintage punch clock that they would have at a factory, it would be very cool to have one here at the Classic Factory. Just saying. I'm
going home for my man Ryan Setton's wedding, and every time you say punch clock, the one that I used to work at Little Caesars, it was freaking a long time ago, but they had a punch clock. It's one of those things you don't take off the wall. I think it's there.
It's still there.
I think I could go in, break in, and hammer it off the wall with my baseball bat.
Get it.
Yes.
Only one way to find out.
I'm going. All right, we'll see you next week.